All right, welcome back to Fusion Friday. Today what we are going to do is we are going to start to look at the assembly workspace within Fusion 360's new update. Now they have, if you create a new design, you'll see an option where you have part design, assembly design, and hybrid design. Part design allows you to only create single bodies within one CAD file. Assembly design allows you to take those parts and insert them all into one final assembly as a separate file. And hybrid design kind of blends the two, where you're able to design the parts and create the assembly within the same file. If you and a partner are working on a project and trying to collaborate on it together, using the hybrid design can run into some issues because only one person can alter documents at a time in Fusion 360. But if you create a series of parts and then add them all to one assembly file, you and whoever you're working with can alter the parts individually and then update them in your overall assembly design. So we're going to take a look at how to use this assembly design space to create a sample piston cylinder. So if you go to assembly design and create new, you'll see that all of your options up here have changed slightly. You're only able to interact with this space as if you were inserting components or creating new components. You can create sketches to act as kind of placeholders, but you won't be able to extrude those sketches. And then you can also assign relationships between your components such as joints, etc. So in your Fusion class file, you will see a new folder called E2FF8 that has all of these different components here for a little single piston cylinder assembly. What you can do is you can insert a new component from that file. So if you navigate until you're able to find this file here, you can insert each one of those components individually. I'm going to start with the piston cylinder and insert that in there. I'm going to start with this one because you need to have one of your components set as a grounded component, meaning that once you assign relationships to it, this component that is grounded will not move. It will act as the anchor point, so that way all of the relationships are based off of that one. And the piston cylinder is the best one of those options to go with. So once you insert the component, you can just go ahead and click OK and leave it as follows. And then you could go ahead and you can insert in all of your other components after that. So I'm going to go ahead and insert the crank, and I am just going to move it. You'll notice that they all fall into the position that they're going to, but I'm going to move them slightly as we do this tutorial just to show you how to interact with the space. So I'm going to insert another component for the connecting rod, move that one off a little bit, and I'm almost creating a little exploded view here. And then my last component as the piston head, we'll go ahead and insert that one. Okay, now what we can do is we can start to assign the joints to these, same way that we did for the other components there. So you're going to go ahead and assign a joint. I'm going to start with just the slider joint from the piston head to the piston cylinder. So I'm going to click on the center of my piston head and navigate it until the center of this little half circle is selected. That's the area where the joints are supposed to line up, and make sure that my joint is selected to a slider and that is going up and down in the Z axis as I want it to. The next one that I'm going to assign is the cylindrical joint, and I am going to assign that to the inside hole of this little piston head right here and its subsequent hole that it's meant to connect to on the connecting rod. Okay? And I want to make sure that I change that to a cylindrical joint just like that, so that it is able to rotate. Now notice that my connecting rod moves back in place because I have everything anchored into the piston cylinder as my grounded component. Finally, I want to go ahead and add in my revolves, and in order to do this, I actually need to hide my piston cylinder component. You can hide components to assign joints if you need to kind of look around and be able to interact with them. Go ahead and assign the joint between the crank and the connecting rod as another revolve this time instead of a cylindrical or a revolute joint. And then finally, we want to go ahead and assign a revolute joint between this and the piston cylinder. So we'll go ahead and we'll assign this to this as a revolute. And now what we can do is we can see that our assembly works exactly as we intended it to. Now another cool thing is that if you go into relationships and you find a joint, you can click on one of your joints, and if you right click on it and you say animate joint relationships, you can allow Fusion to go through this joint all on its own instead of having you interact with the mouse. And you can use this as a way to just test to make sure that everything is functioning as intended. Now, the nice thing is that, again, if you have an assembly and you need to make an alteration on one of the parts, all that you need to do is open up that part design and say you wanted to make this piston head just a little bit taller. What you could do is you can make that extrusion onto this part. Say we want to make it 5 millimeters bigger, press OK. If we save our object, okay, as long as we are still basing our assembly off of that same part, now you'll notice that if we go in here, we'll see that we have this little icon showing up, meaning that we have a part that is out of date in our assembly. And you'll notice that if we click that, it will update our part within the assembly automatically. You don't have to go in and do anything else as long as your parts are still linked to the assembly. If you see this little chain link, it means that any changes that you make in the original part files will get translated to the subsequent assembly. So that's a little quick overview of the assembly space within Fusion 360's new update.